So I got a really interesting question the other day that inspired me to go ahead and make a video about because I think about this stuff all the time. And this is one of those questions that I think has a pretty applicable kind of baseline answer, but then it can go a lot of different places. So that's how I'm going to answer the question. So this question is from Tincha Limbu. Sorry if I say your name wrong. If I did, just say my name wrong and get back at me that way. So they say, "Hey Charles, hope you're in good health. I am unfortunately not in good health, but hopefully one day I will be. But thanks for the wishes, I appreciate it." And then they say, "Just wanted to ask about sound projection and volume. How can I do it better? Is it just how I position the guitar, the way I pluck the strings? I'm confused. P.S. Sick hairdo though." All right, so glad we have the same taste in hair. That's cool. I think I was wearing piggies in the video that they're mentioning. That's the hairdo. So yeah, I can remember. I think kind of going through a phase like this where someone told me, "Okay, look, when you play, you just kind of play to yourself, and you need to pretend that there's someone sitting on the back row of the room and you want to project all the way to them." Okay. And I was definitely not getting very much volume out of the guitar at the time, something that I needed to do. Those pieces of advice, though, I don't really relate to. And I'll probably kind of explain why as we go. There's beneficial things you can take from that, but I don't feel like that's what I do when I play. I don't necessarily play to anyone. That's just not what I'm thinking. But I'll get more into that in a minute. Because maybe you don't want to hear about that stuff. Maybe you want something practical. And that's okay, I understand. So practically, I remember kind of putting myself on training wheels in this area. Okay, so let's say if I'm playing a piece and maybe I play it something like this. Or whatever, okay? Wherever you're at, okay? So what I did was I put myself on training wheels. That means I kind of slowed everything down and I wouldn't let myself not do this. And I would make sure every sound that I made, if this is this level here, which is my current quiet level, and I want to bring it up, I would make sure every sound I made was a definite audible level above that. I would think about putting an accent on every single note and just work on getting the volume up, okay? I'll talk more about sound in a minute, but I think you got to get used to putting in more energy. If you want more energy to come out, you have to put it in, okay? So just do whatever you have to do to make every note basically have an accent on it. Nice and slow as you need to focus on each and every stroke. If you're going to prioritize this. Every note, every one, okay, every finger. Don't forget about the A finger, right? Usually the A finger is going to need some extra training, so be sure to make it just as loud as the others to the best of your ability, okay? And with everything that you play, if you're playing your Giuliani Arpeggio Etude, right? This one. Same thing. Slow it down. Every note has an accent. All the way through. It's going to take a lot of mental effort and discipline to do this. But you'll be better off for it. Okay? focusing on each and every stroke. Everything has an accent on it. It's definitely loud. If nothing else, it's louder than it used to be, okay? And you notice, anyone that hears you is going to notice. Say, oh, you sound louder than you did last week. Yeah, I've been working on it, right? You can try things like preparing your fingers. Like if you're going to do this arpeggio pattern, put everything on the string first. Plant the finger before you play. And there are different types of planting that you can do, but that might help you. You might like the feeling of swinging from the air, just being close to the string and saying, that's how I'm gonna, maybe that's how I get a louder sound, what have you. And anything that you do, okay, you're gonna warm up, you're gonna play some rest stroke scales, cool, same thing. Slow and loud. Okay, and then if you start to speed up, don't let yourself lose the volume. I think what's probably naturally going to happen, this would happen with me, and I always kind of chuckle when I hear people say, practice slowly and don't speed up till you can play it perfectly. And I'm kind of like, okay. Just part of my brain says, I'm not doing that. Like, I guarantee you, to quote Charles Barkley, I guarantee because I still do this same kind of work a lot. Something I'm working on right now is these Sabikis arpeggios. He can play them amazingly fast. He doesn't lose volume. Whatever. So the way I mainly work on it is like this, what I just did. Every note loud. So let's say I play that whole thing slowly, or you play that whole Giuliani study slowly, or your whole sword piece slowly. The first thing I'm going to do is let it ride. I just can't help it, okay? So if you're like me, you're going to have to deal with that, and you're going to have to go back and forth some. It's true, the fastest way to change your technique is to never do the old technique. So if you play something slowly and loudly, and you're very disciplined, and you get all the way through, and then you go and you play that tempo and you revert back, okay, that is going to be some kind of a step back in a way. That's just part of it, though. We take steps forward and we take steps back. What I don't want you to do is torture yourself, which is why I say, okay, I did it. I did it good. I was a good boy. Get my sticker. Now let me see if I can play the dang thing. And then you see where you are, right? So I think what will happen over time is initially you may feel like you have to put a lot of oomph into every single stroke. Like I'm going to play a rest stroke scale. Maybe you play Villalobos 827 and you're like, I got to do it like this. That's so much work. Yeah, it is. But the answer is yes. You got to do it that way. And then I think a couple of things will happen. You'll probably build some strength and some kind of command of your hand in a different way. I think some of it is literal strength building. I think some of it is just kind of access to strong moves. If you desire louder moves, you're more likely to find them. Okay? And then, fatigue is kind of interesting. You do something too long or you do it too strenuous, then you have fatigue. You're tired, you're sore, whatever, okay? Sometimes it can show us we're being really inefficient. If you look at great players, Pepe, I've been watching a lot of Pepe lately. John Williams, Julian Bream, Segovia, I like the OGs. They don't look stressed when they play. And some of these guys are some of the loudest guys you'll ever hear, because when they were playing, it wasn't like today. Today you can go and play anything and you can be mic'd. So volume is not really an issue. And I'm going to get more into that in a minute. Back then it wasn't that way. In fact, Segovia's whole deal, a big part of his deal was to have the guitar be heard. He wanted to play with an orchestra and not be mic'd and be heard. Okay? Imagine that. But his whole technique was based around that. He wanted to play big halls, not mic'd, and be heard. And he did. Okay? So, sometimes when I'm doing work and I get tired, I start to relax some. And then you start to find kind of a groove where you're getting big result with less effort. Maybe sometimes it's very easy effort. And that's the groove that you want to find. Easy power. Power, but not stress. Even if you were to make a stressed sound, it's not coming from like really tensing your hand. It's still coming from sound crafting. If you want to do more of something that sounds a little bit more vicious or stressed or whatever, as compared to something like that, right? So that's kind of the practical thing. Put yourself on training wheels. I think we all have to do this sometimes with different things, which means you have to take a special consideration, and you have to make the goal of having yourself do that all the time. Okay, now I'm going to go off into the deep end. Just because I like it, it's fun. Because I don't care about any of that. Like, I do. But none of that drives me. Volume, I don't care about it. Can the person in the back row hear me? Statistically, the person in the back row is probably not paying attention. So, what about that? What do I care if they can hear me? What if I'm a quiet player? Well, then they need to move to the front, as far as I'm concerned. Okay. But if you were to say, for me, is a certain amount of volume and projection important to the way that I play the guitar? Yes, it is. But not for its own sake. This is why I don't relate to the advice. I don't think it's bad advice. I just don't relate. Of play out and play to the person on the back row. Because I'm thinking, play what? Play out what? Well, your guitar, your sound. Okay, what sound? What is your sound? You got a bright sound? You got a sweet sound? What kind of music are you playing? Like, what do you have to bring to the table when it comes to sound? Okay, now this is where it's like, I'm not really concerned with playing out. And speaking of Pepe, I listened to a long interview he did a while back with, I think it was Juan Carlos Laguna. And Laguna just asked him, he was like, why can you play so freaking loud? He was like, you got the reputation of just being the loudest player of all time. And he said, did you sit behind the guitar as a kid and say, I'm going to be the loudest player? And Pepe said, no. He said, never for a moment. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. That type of process. Why does Pepe play? Why does he have the ability to play as loud as he does? Well, I don't know. I would guess it has something to do with him working with the instrument that's in his hands. That's why. And what it can do. If you hear Pepe, everything he does is extremely polished. So when he plays so loud, it doesn't sound like the guitar is about to break. It sounds like the guitar loves it. And he never, sometimes he uses the flamenco thumb sound. So he gets this stuff going on, right? And he'll do that sometimes even in classical music, in his taroba or whatever. He'll use that sound. That's the only exception I have ever heard of him, ever, where he makes a sound that is not absolutely smooth. That's it. So that goes to show you can have both worlds. It depends on how you treat the guitar, okay? So I think the deeper area of consideration here is sound study. In your work, maybe right now would be a good idea to say, I'm just going to try and make every sound louder. Cool. Eventually, I might recommend turn that into just a daily sound study. Be interested in what your guitar can do. It's what I do every single morning, right after I feed my cats. Well, after I feed my cats, and then I make coffee, and then and then I sit with the guitar, and I have to warm it up. If I haven't played it in a while, it's mad at me, so I have to say, I'm sorry. You're gonna get over it. Depending on the guitar, sometimes it's like, I'm so mad at you, and I'm like, I'm sorry. I know, I was very bad, but give me another chance, okay? And I'm warming it up, and slowly but surely, it starts to say, okay, maybe I'll do this, and then before you know it, it's like, yeah, let's go, right? So I'm listening to it. Okay, I'm feeding it free stroke. I'm feeding it rest stroke. I'm feeding it thumb stuff. And I'm seeing, how does it respond? If I do a rest stroke, it's on an open string. What does it sound like? Does it like that? If I make a sound that's kind of like this, I'm like, oh, that's cool, that's nice. But then I change something and it goes from this to this. Then I'm like, oh, it likes that more. This is cool. But it really likes this. Maybe all I did was change the angle a little bit. Maybe I changed the stroke or whatever. Maybe I didn't necessarily put more effort into it. Maybe I just kind of minimalized the approach. I made the transition of energy more efficient. Okay? So I would think about it more like that. Then you are just concerned with getting your sounds out because you have to. It's not obligation. I don't play for anybody. I don't have to play for anybody. I don't have to play for anybody the rest of my life. If I'm going to play for someone, it's because I'm convicted about what I have to do. If there are people around me, or if they're just cats, I don't care. Because I'm not going to do anything different. Yeah, if there are people around me, I'll feel some of the performance anxiety. Well, sure. I'm not saying it's not different in that way. It does make it a unique moment. But in terms of my goals and what I'm going to try and get out, that is just because any passage of music, it's going to call for the best qualities that instrument can bring out for that moment, okay? Sometimes it's the biggest sound or the punchiest sound or something where you kind of make a statement. But a lot of times it's subtlety. The crafting of it. In the way that you're going to go about something, okay? So yeah, projection and volume, they're part of it, but I'm not worried about it. If the top isn't driven enough, you're not going to have the crafting. There's not enough to work with, okay? So driving the top, giving enough character, Those are things that motivate me. I mean, I think we really need motivation. When we have motivation, that's like, sometimes I hear people say this that I'm working with, and they're like, that would be good for me to do. I need to do that. Part of my brain thinks, man, you ain't never going to do that. Like, that is not very strong motivation. That's almost saying, I don't even know why I need this. To say that would be good for me to be able to do, it kind of implies you don't even know if you're going to use it. So you can what? Put it on the shelf and see if you need it later? Why are you going to even do this? Okay, conviction. I have to be able to do this, right? So when I play, I have to know, to the best of my knowledge, I'm getting everything that I can get out of the guitar. And I'm reaching for the appropriate amounts of things based on what I'm playing. Okay, and then volume is taken care of. Projection is taken care of. And, there are loud players, there are quiet players. But what they have in common is, conviction about their sound. A quiet player has just as much crafting in their sound as a loud player. Probably, unless there's some kind of volume places that someone can go that someone can't go because they're not going to play that loud. But if someone has a reputation for being a quiet player and they play in front of a mic, they can still do amazing things. In fact, you might argue they have a more in touch ability to craft within kind of a smaller world. They don't have literally as loud a dynamic range, but it's something the guitar can do. It can do these little minute, like in between dynamic ranges, It can do that, right? And then the issue with feeling like you don't play loud enough, I think, is an issue of not making it a priority to sculpt sound. I think that's actually the issue. And maybe we need to work our way there. I did. So that's why I said, here's what I did. The first thing was I just had to make sure I played louder. I went through that, I think, for a few weeks. And then, I got used to it. And then I played louder. Okay. Maybe the impression then became I was playing out and I wasn't playing to myself. That's fine. But I feel like I play to myself now, like I just talked about before. But I'm just more interested in sculpting the sound. But even if you make a quiet sound, it has to be detailed. I had a choral conductor one time tell us, the quieter the sound, the more detail it needs, the more articulation it needs, the more clarity it needs. I think that's also true with the guitar. If you're making a sound that's quiet, the issue may be that it's not very specific. We may not be going for anything. You can make a quiet sound you're going to do that sometimes, are you not? But it's like, what are you doing, though? So, projection's projection. Okay? What are you doing? And this is where I would make an analogy, because I don't know how else to say it. Play quiet but really clear and bright. Okay, fine. But what if that doesn't mean anything to somebody? Okay, now I'm thinking, well, you are staying the night at a friend's house, and you wake up in the night and you're really thirsty, and all you know is you have to go into their kitchen. It's dark, you don't know where the lights are, and you have to find some water. So you don't want to wake anyone up, so you're going to tiptoe and sneak while you try and feel with your hands in the dark and try and find where some water is. Or whatever analogy suits you, right? But it's still very crafted, and you have to put in enough detail for the top to say, okay, I can still do stuff with that. It's still a character. My teacher used to say, The quietest sound that you're allowed to make is a sound that still resonates the top. Makes sense. Makes sense, right? And I think the reality of the situation is, if you were to perform anywhere, you can have a mic. That's just the reality. When I do gigs, I'm mic'd. If it's like a concert, sometimes yes, sometimes no. It depends on the venue, and sometimes it's all up to me. Sometimes someone else is running the sound and things like that, so they decide that. So it kind of depends. I feel like these days when I go to a concert by a famous player, more often than not, they're mic'd. You know, sometimes no, but a lot of times they are. Even if they, are not known for a quiet player, it just helps the audience out a little bit. Okay, so people have their opinions on that, and I think people, they have good reasons for thinking on one side or the other. But in terms of like volume being an issue, I wouldn't really worry about it. If you feel like you're crafting sound and you're a quiet player and you're crafting as much as you can craft and getting the desired sound that you want, I think you're fine. I think you're fine. At the same time, I can remember sitting in front of my teacher and playing a rest stroke scale and him just sitting there going, louder. And then I would play it louder and then he'd go, louder. And I would play it louder and he'd go, louder. I was like, okay, my hand hurt, right? So you can develop your technique that way if you desire. But I think, what I would keep in the back of your mind as you're on your training wheels and you're saying, I'm just going to make every sound louder, just think, what do I think about sound? Whose sounds do I like? I'm going to play this piece. What do I want it to sound like? I want it to sound like going through a nice stroll in the park on a sunny day. I want it to sound like a really vicious thunderstorm that makes my cats run and hide under the bed. Whatever, right? And just have this in the back of your mind, okay? And then, I don't know what kind of guitar that you play, but it's no excuse to think this way. Yeah, a handmade guitar will make these things more readily available. You see more kind of immediate results, and it can train you. I mean, it does a lot of these things. But man, I could tell you multiple stories about really amazing guitarists playing on cheap guitars and pretty much sounding the same. I think most of us would be hard pressed to be like, oh, that's a $200 Cordoba guitar. I thought it was a $7,000 handmade classical guitar. So this stuff, for the most part, it is backwards compatible. Look, I had this guitar somebody sent me from China. It's like $70, and I like it. Like, does it do as much as this guitar? No. When I play it, do I feel like I can't do anything? No. My mindset is the same. What can it do? In fact, I made a video on it just for fun. I was like, can I play this guitar? And basically, if someone were to hear this recording, they wouldn't say like, oh, he's playing a crap guitar. It was just fun. It doesn't play as well. It has some pretty big issues, but it's $70. If that's all someone can afford, it will do kind of what they need. So the mindset is, what can I get out of this guitar, right? And then just think, let's pretend you do have a $70 China guitar, or you have a $200 Cordoba or whatever. If you train yourself this way, and this is the way that you play, imagine what you're gonna do if and when you get your hands on a $5,000, $7,000, $8,000, whatever, a nice handmade guitar. You're gonna be like a kid in the candy store. You're like, all these things that I love to do, now they're there in spades. There's so much to, like, oh, it'll do this and this, it'll do this and this. Last thing I'll say is, for years, I never played a really great Jose Ramirez guitar. And then even when I did play some, I was able to play some. I don't think they were really great, right? Anyway, eventually I did get to play on a really nice Jose Ramirez. I can't remember who built it. I I can't remember, but it was really great. And I saw what all the fuss was about these guitars. And they have a longer scale length for one, which is difficult. But one of the things that it did, and just the way that it was built, was I remember saying, I feel like on a normal guitar where you kind of feel these kind of points where the sound changes, so you might move your hand a little. I said, I feel like this guitar has a point in between all of those points. Like, that's how sensitive it was to sound. And that was what it did better than any other guitar that I had played, right? I actually thought about buying it. I didn't because I couldn't get over the big scale. And I wanted to think like, oh, you'll get used to that. But I think that was kind of wishful thinking. And it wasn't cheap. So I was like, no, I can't do this. But it was such an interesting experience to feel like, man, I would have access to more sounds than I have on my other guitars. So it's just a couple ways to look at it. I certainly don't mean to overwhelm anybody, but I would say I don't believe in saying things like they're in a vacuum. I just don't, and I'm not gonna. It doesn't mean anybody has to do anything, but I'm not gonna pretend, oh, play louder so that the person in the back row can hear you. I don't care about that. So I would say do the next thing, do the training wheels. Keep in the back of your mind, what about sound? Start doing sound study. Combine sound study with your technical work. Okay? If you're going to do scales, pick a sound. Bright rest stroke. Make every stroke fit into that sound. Rich, sweet rest stroke. Whatever you're doing that day for your technique, right? Middle of the road, kind of general free stroke. It could be any dynamic, it could be any color, right? Just, think about it. Try some things out. I would say combine that with your technique work. It's more technique than technique. If you do a bunch of technique and you're not thinking about sound, I'm not sure what you're doing. And I'm not judging because I've done that a lot. I don't know what I wasn't really doing much. You're getting some dexterity, you're getting some strength. Those things are important. Okay, but for what? I don't know. Couldn't tell you. It's like shooting a probe off into space, hoping it finds something. It could, but it's not likely. But if you listen to Pepe Ramiro and you hear him play the Arnwez and you're like, man, I can't play it. It's going to get copyrighted. But if you're like, man, that sound, that's, I want that sound. I want something like it. I want my rest stroke to sound full and big like his does. Then that will guide your work. Because if you're getting this, that ain't gonna cut it. That's you don't have a use for that, right? So if you study sound, you're actually practicing technique, functional technique that you can use for something. If you're just working on technique, those moments are kind of few and far between, right? If you want to get technique, study sound because it takes technique to make it happen.